Hey everyone, welcome to your distance learning video for Tuesday, May 12th. This video is mainly a review for people who were unable to make it to my Zoom sessions today. So if that's you, you came to the right place. Basically what we're going to do is go over the things that we learned about weather fronts and pressure systems and go into a little bit more detail about what kind of weather we get with those things and why. So let's go ahead and get started. So what kind of weather can you expect to get when a cold front moves into your area? Well, first of all, thunderstorms. Cold fronts bring temperature drops, wind gusts, heavy rain, sometimes hail, sometimes thunder, and sometimes lightning. So basically what's happening here is that the cold front has cold, dense air. And we know that things that are dense, they tend to sink beneath things that are less dense. So this cold, dense air moves in, and as it encounters the warm air that was already at that place, it very quickly forces that warm air to rise because the cold air is more dense, so it sinks beneath the warm air. Well, that warm air had a lot of water vapor in it. So as that cold air moves in and forces that warm air up into the upper atmosphere, that warm air then cools off very quickly and its water vapor condenses into liquid water, and we get sudden and heavy rainfall. So you got to remember here is that when the cold front moves in, it brings that cold, dense air, which forces the existing warm air up very quickly, and it really can result in some nasty weather for us. All right, next let's review what kind of weather we'd get with a warm front. So you might remember from last week we said that it will often bring light rain, and then that'll be followed by some warmer temperatures. So along the front edge of that warm front, you'll get some rainfall. The reason for that is that as that warm front moves in, it encounters colder air that was already in that area. And as we know, that warm air is less dense, and that causes it to rise. So as it moves in, it encounters that colder air, and it gradually starts to rise above that colder air. So similar to what happens when a cold front moves in, we've got warm air with water vapor in it, rising, getting into the upper atmosphere where it's colder, cooling off the water, and it condenses, and that falls as rain. So this happens more gradually. We don't get the violent weather like we get with cold fronts moving in because the warm air just kind of rises gradually as it encounters that colder air. But we do often get rainfall with this kind of front. Then when that front edge gets past you, you get some nicer weather. This is often what causes those extreme temperature changes that we see in the Chicagoland area where it could be 50 degrees one day and then all of a sudden we get a little bit of rain and then 70-degree weather. Now that's because a warm front passed us by and then we are within that warm front. Next, let's talk about pressure. Air always moves from areas of high pressure into areas of low pressure. Think of it like this. If I have a balloon and I blow up that balloon, I have high pressure inside of that balloon. Now, if I let go of that balloon, what happens? All that air comes blasting out because that air wants to move from the high pressure inside the balloon to the lower pressure outside of the balloon, and that balloon's going to fly all over the room if I let it. Well, in the atmosphere, air is doing the same thing. It wants to go from high pressure to low pressure. So when we have a high pressure system, that means that there is high pressure in the upper atmosphere. So now that we know what air wants to do, it always wants to move from high pressure to low pressure, we know that the air down here on Earth's surface is from in the upper atmosphere. So if there was high atmospheric pressure up there, air is going to move from up there to down here. So that air from up there is cooler and it's dry air. So down here on Earth's surface, we're experiencing nice dry weather, nice dry air. We don't have a lot of water vapor in the air because that air came from up high where there was high pressure and it moved down toward Earth's surface where the pressure was lower. Since this air again came from the upper atmosphere where it's dry, this is when we'd see clear skies and pretty nice mild weather. Because what happens when that cooler air moves down here to Earth's surface actually heats up that air, and so we often have those nice clear sky warm summer days. And remember that in a high pressure system, we have that cool, dry air sinking from the upper atmosphere down here on Earth. So down here on Earth's surface, we experience dry, clear weather. When we have a low pressure system, the opposite is happening. That means that in the upper atmosphere, the air pressure is low. So we know that the air from down here on the surface is going to move up into that lower pressure area. Well, because of the water cycle, that air that's already down here near the surface has a lot of water vapor in it. So as that air rises into the lower pressure area, it's going to cool off, it's going to condense, and it's going to rain. So this is why a low pressure system usually brings rainfall with it, because we've got that moist air from down here on the surface, lots of water vapor in it from the water cycle. Again, is going to rise because it's looking for that lower pressure area, which in this case, in a low pressure system, the low pressure is up in the atmosphere. So our surface air travels up, rises up into the upper atmosphere, into that lower pressure area. So again, you always got to remember, air is always going to move from areas of higher pressure to areas of lower pressure. So now that we know what kind of weather the different fronts and the pressure systems bring, we can actually make a lot of predictions about the weather based on these weather maps. So, for example, if you look at that one in the middle, it shows us Chicago, and it's in that blue area, which means it's a cold front. Well, what does a cold front typically bring? Well, it usually brings a lot of rain with it. So we can predict maybe we're going to have some pretty decent rain and wind. We also said it can bring some serious wind. And also, it's a low pressure system. So if we're in a low pressure system, that means that our air from down here on the surface is going to move toward that low pressure system in the upper atmosphere. It wants to move toward lower pressure. So our air is going to be rising. Well, when that air from down here that has been picking up water vapor from the water cycle, when that air rises, it cools off, it condenses, and it rains. So we kind of have both here. We've got a cold front and we've got a low pressure system. Fortunately, if we look toward the weekend, that map on the right, it shows that we are then within the warm front. So we should experience an increase in temperatures and maybe some light rain too as that front passes us by. But once we're within the warm front, we should get some nice, more seasonal weather that we're used to for May. So for today's activity, you're going to go into your distance learning folder and you're going to find weather fronts and air pressure sort. And you got to send that to Notability. The second page of this has all these symbols and definitions and weather patterns. So basically all you have to do is see which three of these fit under high pressure, which fit under low pressure, and which fit under each of the types of fronts. So all you have to do is select text box, and then you just go to the second page, select one of the definitions or symbols, and drag it where it belongs. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to email me or send me a Schoology message, and I am more than happy to help. Talk to you guys soon.